Hello, everybody. This is Jerry Shirk. Welcome to our webinar on helping mentees set and achieve goals. It's 10:01. We usually wait for a few minutes for people to come in, but I think I'm just going to jump off into it because we have so much information to get out there today. We have three panelists, including myself. Again, I'm Jerry Shirk. Dr. Ed Bowers is coming to you from Clemson University, and William Figueroa from Los Angeles Team Mentoring in Los Angeles, California. And we're each going to talk about 15 minutes. We're going to start out with Ed, and then I'll take the middle portion, and then William will be the last presenter, and then we're going to take some questions. A little housekeeping: all attendees are muted. Type questions in the Q&A panel, and Minnie from Mentor is going to moderate those questions, and we're going to answer them at the end. Live captions are available by clicking on CC. We're going to have some polls, and so the polls are, and I believe Minnie will bring them up. What is your experience level in the mentoring field? One choice: beginner, experienced, or expert. We'll give you a few seconds. And thanks to the folks that are putting their names and where they're from and the organization in the chat box too. So beginner is about a third, experience roughly 2/3, and expert 10%. That's great. And the next poll question: role in the mentoring field. Mentoring program staff, practitioner, mentor, educator, TA provider, researcher, funder, or other. We'll give you 10 seconds. And the results are 3/4 are mentoring program staff, 15% are mentors, welcome. 2% educators, TA providers, 1%, and then minor percentage for researchers and others. So thanks, everybody. And program model. Now, this one is going to interest the panelists because we're going to be talking about goal setting, and so we can be able to address whether it's one-to-one or group mentoring as far as the processes. So are you a one-to-one mentoring program, group mentoring program, a combination, or NA not currently involved in a program? And looks like 58% one-to-one mentoring, 4% group mentoring, combination a third, and 5% not currently involved in a program. So thanks for that. That helps us and helps you all see who is attending today. Goal setting: our program has specific goal setting model or process in place. Yes, no, or NA, not applicable. And somebody says, I cannot hear you. William and Ed, are you hearing me okay? Okay. And somebody else, Minnie, says, I can hear you. Okay. Goal setting model. Our program does have a model that we use: 56% no, 35% NA, around 10%. Okay, thank you. Good to know. And good to know, 1 week after the webinar, all attendees will receive an email and instructions how to access a PDF of presentation slides and the webinar recording, as well as a bunch of resources that we loaded up too. And let's see here. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ed Bowers. And Ed, if you'll introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Jerry. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on this wonderful St. Patrick's Day. My name is Ed Bowers. I'm an associate professor of youth development leadership at Clemson University in South Carolina. I've experience in teaching and working out of school time programs from the preschool through middle school and high school and into graduate level now as a college professor, both in the US and abroad. I'm also serving with Dr. David Dubois as a senior member of the National Mentoring Resource Center's Research Board. So I do a lot of work reviewing programs and practices and resources that some of you may have sent to the National Mentoring Resource Center. My main area of research is looking at the role of mentoring and promoting the 5 C's of PYD. And in my work over the past 15 years, I've been collaborating with programs around the country and around the world to develop, implement, and evaluate after-school programs, mentoring programs, and school-based programs. So thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you, Ed. And great to have you today. And William.
Hello, I'm William. I'm the Director of Programs for Los Angeles Team Mentoring. I've been with them for 15 years now. Prior to that, I ran a one-on-one mentoring program for about 10 years. I'm the co-chair for the Los Angeles Mentoring Partnership, one of the local coalitions here in Los Angeles, part of the bigger coalition of the California Mentoring Partnership. And, you know, as it says on this slide here, you know, I've walked in the shoes of many of the kids that we serve, come from a very similar background growing up in an urban environment in beautiful, sunny Miami. And I'm now here in beautiful, sunny California. And I see somebody on the call today that's local, Megan from Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters. Hi, Megan. But anyway, our program recently pivoted as a result, as probably many of you, from the pandemic, and we went into e-mentoring. So I have a lot of exciting information to share, but you know, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, William. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Jerry Shirk. I live in Encinitas, California, just north of San Diego. I was a school counselor for several years, and then I developed and ran my own group mentoring programs in the school system. I've been a consultant and trainer for programs for about 25 years and helped a bunch of programs, mostly youth mentoring, some adult, work for the Navy and the Air Force also with their mentoring efforts. And I learned goal setting, mentoring, and leadership during a long career as a defensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns. So we're all happy to be here today. We've been working on this presentation for a few weeks. We're excited. A few of the learning goals. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to read them all because I want to save some time for actually getting the information out of there. But it's basically an overview of goal setting within mentoring relationships. And again, you can read the bullet points. I do want to bring up that there's a key to the presenter slides today. Ed is very Irish today. He's got the green banner. And actually, I didn't wear any green today, but I do have my my 3-leaf clovers here. I will be representing the ocean with blue, and William, as always, will be the sunshine of the presentation, and the banners on his slides will be orange. And with that, I will turn it over to Ed.
Thank you again, Jerry. So just a quick overview of my presentation. I'm not going to spend much on it, but as you can see, we're going to cover what's goal setting and support. How is that? Why is it important to cover this in mentoring relationships? What are some ways it may look like in practice? And then starting to think about, well, what can we take into account when we're working with different youth from a diversity of backgrounds? And then towards the end of the presentation, we're going to share some additional resources that are out there that are available to help you kind of implement goal setting and support in your programs with young people. So key thing, as you're very all well familiar, goals direct decisions we make, the action we take, and ultimately goals direct the direction of our lives. As young people navigate complex worlds, this idea of setting and pursuing goals helps them to make sense of the world, helps them to identify opportunities and overcome risk in meeting their needs, and then finally helps them promote positive youth development. Mentoring relationships are well suited to support youth in goal setting and pursuit because mentors help guide youth in building their self-confidence. It helps give them direction, and they usually again point to the focus on that future that is important for many relationships as you're working with young people. When you're looking in the literature and in the research, you may see this goal setting and support referred to as instrumental support or instrumental mentoring. So it's really important that you guys all have the opportunity to support and young people on this journey they take as they pursue their goals. Next, we want to think about, well, why is goal setting and support important for mentoring relationships? Well, one, it's one of the most important activities you can engage in with your mentee. It kind of provides that structure and support to the activities and conversations you have with young people. So that's kind of a key thing, is that these goals are important for that purpose. In addition, just the process of setting goals with young people and monitoring their progress, research shows that helps support the relationships that you have with them. It makes them stronger. It builds communication between mentors and mentees. And then these type of interaction relationships and goal setting activities are also key for all types of mentoring relationships. So as we mentioned, there are one-on-one mentoring relationships that are very informal settings where maybe you're setting academic goals, but also these type of activities are important for maybe natural mentoring relationships where you meet kids more informally and help them pursue their passions and purpose. And finally, just in general, as you see in the next couple of slides, goals give meaning and direction to our lives, and they're linked to well-being, health, and success, and we'll see in the next couple of slides. So my research has shown that these abilities to set and pursue goals are linked to several different PYD outcomes, positive youth development outcomes, to make it clear, such as higher grades, career achievement, motivation, feeling empowered, and giving back to your communities. In addition, when kids have higher level of these goal-directed skills, they're also less likely to engage in problematic behaviors or exhibit problematic symptoms such as depressive symptoms, delinquency, smoking, underage drinking, and substance use. So as you can see, these goal setting and goal-directed skills are really important for many different outcomes in young people. So when we're looking at practice, there's several different models out there for what goal-directed skills can look like. I worked with Friends and Their Children and other colleagues around the country a few years back to develop a metaphor for what goal-directed skills could look like. So it's really helpful to think about the idea of the metaphor of a GPS device, right? So everyone is familiar with what a GPS device is for, right? You set a destination, that GPS device then gives you your route. And then sometimes when you're traveling along that route, obstacles come up like traffic, an accident, and so on that take you off your original route, but then get you back to that ultimate destination you have. And we like to kind of see that as a similar metaphor for how people set and pursue their goals. Goal selection is that first process, right? You set and prioritize to commit to a set of personal and important goals to yourself. P is pursuit of strategies. So you pursue goals by developing strategies and leveraging resources such as seeking help, practicing, and so on. And then finally, as we mentioned, you get traffic, you get obstacles. Kids could have original plans not work out. Their original goals may not be realized anymore. So they have to shift gears and bounce back when things get difficult. So those are some of the other skills that you work on with young people. Mentors can support youth in this process in developing these skills and applying these skills. So I like to kind of think about maybe mentors are like a driver ed instructor as they guide youth on this journey to building these skills towards reaching their goals. So let's take a look on the next slide so we can hear from you all about an example of a mentor and a mentee working on a goal. So here's the scenario. Maria is 17 years old and just started her junior year in a new town, in a new school. The first few months of her new school were difficult as the classes were much more advanced than those at her prior school. So she is supported to join a college and career mentoring program. At that program, she meets LaToya, her mentor, and builds a strong relationship with her. So I'm just curious in the chat box, if you could share maybe what could be a goal that Maria and LaToya set together for Maria to pursue. Graduation, that could be an appropriate goal. Excelling in school. Good, getting comfortable teachers. Join a new club at school, acclimating new school, earning a certain facet. Right. So as we think about these, so this is a very diverse set of goals, right? So suppose that Maria and LaToya, in support, so again, the goal is to empower young people. Maria identifies that her most important goal with this semester is to improve her math grade, right? So she picks a specific goal. And usually you may see, and Jerry's going to touch on some of these more of a setting goals, maybe setting a SMART goal. So if Maria set the goal of improving her math grade for this semester, what are some of the strategies she could use to support, to reach that goal? What are some of the strategies she could pursue to reach the goal of improving her math grade by the end of the semester? Obtaining a tutor, right? So setting a specific goal. So you could say by a certain date. So that's where it's key. Like those SMART goals, they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic. Right, getting tutors, setting aside time for math. Right, so that's those resources we think about. Doing 5 to 10 questions a day. So there's a diversity of different strategies you could use to help set towards that goal. So suppose Maria's, the last thing to consider then is, what are some of the things that may happen along the way that may affect Maria's ability to pursue that goal, right? So for example, Maria may have set the idea of going to tutoring sessions each day on Mondays, but that was after her basketball practice. So she was really tired. So then some of these strategies you're sharing may be the alternative substituted strategies that are the way of shifting gears to kind of pursue those goals. So this is just ways that, again, you're doing a lot of this stuff already with your young people, but this is a nice framework to kind of put onto an example and also think about, like, how are we selecting goals? How are we pursuing those goals? And what are our plans when obstacles come up so we can shift gears? Next slide, please. So when we look at young people, you're all working with diverse youth from ages, possibly preschool all the way through high school through college. So there's a lot of different considerations taken into account as you're setting goals with young people. One is for all youth is to take that time to build trust and connection, right? So you may want to build up cultural empathy and cultural humility, because one of the key findings we have is that the goals young people set are really influenced by their parents, peers, and the cultural norms of their community. So when you're working with young people and you want to set goals within a STEM career, that may not meet the support of their peers. That may be considered not a cool goal. So you have to think about what are kids' backgrounds when you're helping them set their goals. In addition, our research shows that how kids set and pursue goals are very different for younger and older mentees. There's some skills that are really advanced, such as picking one goal to help two ends, such as joining a sports team to get in shape, but also to meet friends. Young kids aren't very good at balancing that idea of like two goals or one goal to meet two ends. Older kids may be more likely to do that and be better prepared for that. But that's where you're going to, there's research that shows how you can support different age kids, but that's something to keep in mind. In addition, there's age differences in the type of goals kids set and the time frame. And it kind of makes sense. Younger kids need shorter term goals, and they may think of getting a good grade on the next test. Versus as kids get older and become teenagers, they have a more understanding of their personal future, and they can see a longer drawn out time, such as people mentioned, graduation, so they may have a long-term goal and they may have a different type of goal, or getting a job, their first job in high school. So those age differences are important to consider as you work with kids to set and pursue goals. And again, there's a lot of research out there that kind of help provide those tips. We're just limited in time for how much we can share today. Next slide. So as you work with young people to pursue those goals and set and pursue those goals, here are just some tips and potential pitfalls to consider. So even though I mentioned that younger and older youth differ in how they maybe proceed with some of these skills, there are 6 skills that kind of go across the age span based on our research. And here are those 6. And some you may already be doing, such as, and Jerry's going to dig into these more in his slide, and so is William in some of his slides, such as selecting and prioritizing a set of meaningful, realistic, and specific goals, making and sticking to a detailed step-by-step plan, staying focused and showing persistent effort with those strategies, keeping track of goal progress and how strategies are working, seeking help from others, and substituting strategies when those first choice strategies aren't working well, which we kind of talked about with Maria and Latoya. Maybe that first strategy didn't work out in terms of tutoring. She needs another strategy. Next slide. So some other things to think about is as you're tackling this, you may say, there's instrumental mentoring, which is the idea of setting goals, but you also want to build a relationship with young people. And that idea, you may say, I have a developmental approach. I want to build emotional skills, social emotional skills, and build a strong relationship. The idea is these aren't incompatible goals. or these aren't incompatible processes. The idea is to find that balance between relationship building and goal support activities. And recent research by Sam McCoy and colleagues kind of said there's a sweet spot you can find between building relationships and setting goals. And you kind of need both within a relationship, a mentoring relationship. Another key thing is to be intentional with your support. And I know that's kind of common sense, like thinking ahead and planning, but that idea of thinking of and working with young people, being intentional with your support is helpful for providing critical feedback, to identifying resources they may need as trouble arises before it comes up. So you're not being reactive, you're being proactive with the support you provide. Another key thing, as we mentioned, the goals kids set maybe within settings you're not always in, and they need other support. That network support is key. So if it's around academic skills, you may want to connect with their teachers, or you may want to talk to their parents about what kind of supports are provided at home. That broader system of support is going to make that difference in whether the young person is successful in pursuing that goal. Another key tip is you yourselves have many goals. So again, you're at this session, you're setting goals for yourself. If you're pursuing a graduate degree, you have family goals. You may use that process that you're going through as a role model and guide for the young people you're working with. Another key tip is be aware of bias, both positive and negative. So sometimes you may overlook some of the problems they're having because you really want to see that the process you're going through with the young person is working. And so you want to see more than what's there. And the opposite side, you may be really dejected when the young person is not making the progress you would expect them to make by a certain point. But it's key to remember, teenagers and young people aren't adults when they're setting and pursuing goals. They don't have necessarily that time limitation that we may have, like having kids, getting a job, retiring. We have all those time limitations that teenagers don't necessarily see. So that's important to think about, setting those high and realistic expectations for progress that align with what a teenager's expectations are. The key thing is when they fail, maybe, a goal is not achieved or a strategy didn't work out, you want to emphasize that they did learn a lot of skills and they built a lot of connections, maybe as they sought help and they grew as a young person. Finally, one final tip is, as William mentioned, working with kids from certain backgrounds, they have these skills. They may just not be using them towards the positive ends you'd hope that their goals will be set in. Whether it's helping be a class clown to being more involved in delinquent behaviors. They may have really good goals-directed skills. They just need the support of a mentor to leverage those skills towards positive ends. So that's a key thing to always think about is young people have strengths regardless of the situation they're in. So that's my last key takeaway. And I'm going to pass off to Jerry to kind of dig into some activities and strategies to kind of make these processes more concrete. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ed. I really appreciate that. And nice presentation. And thank you so much. And also thank you for writing a wonderful chapter on goal setting on Be a Better Mentor. So folks, if you haven't read it, I think it's Ed's chapter is 10 or 11 pages. Just Google Be a Better Mentor. I'm not sure we're going to have it attached to the resources, but it's a great read. It covers the GPS, which is a really, really nice system they developed. So thank you again. So I'm going to talk real briefly about what I believe to be the foundations of goal setting. I think as practitioners in mentoring programs, we can't forget that we are leading with being a mentor. So what are good mentors? What are successful mentors? Mentors are people that are not being prescriptive or directive, or what I call the bony finger mentor, somebody that puts their finger in the mentee's chest and says, you need to do this. So whenever possible, I know in some programs, the mentees in some ways may be mandated to set goals around academics, or if they're with the juvenile justice system, mandated to go to programs, they might have goals around that, but mentees should set their own goals. And if they're setting goals that are mandated in some way, allow them to set one that they want, one that lights them up. And kind of related to that, and sometimes I think about this as the mantra of not only goal setting, but mentoring, and how I came across it years ago when I was going back to school to study psychology. There was a professor there who was very popular, not only for his classes, for talking about counseling theory, but he was a counselor and a therapist, and all the students wanted to come see him. So I had the opportunity to sit down with him once over coffee, and I said, I heard you're very good, and why do all the students want to come to you for therapy? He paused for a minute, and then he looked at me and he said, I think it's because I try to find out what people like and love, what they want out of life, and I help them as much as I can achieve these things. So I think that's a good way to think about goal setting. It's not what the program's goals are, the mentor's goals, the parents' goals, but it's the mentees' goals. Next, please. Considerations for designing goal setting activities. And I noticed that Ed more or less covered this too. His heading was contextual and developmental considerations. And so I started thinking about all the different facets and elements and situations that can occur in programs related to goal setting as I was putting my slides together, and I came up with 15, and I went, yikes, that's way too many to cover. So I actually made a handout with some of the things that occurred to me. So it's attached to the materials. But here are a few, and one is, are your mentees motivated or unmotivated? And I put that in caps because I think that may be the primary concern. Or, if you're with a program and you're trying to promote goal setting, it could be that some of the mentees just aren't motivated to do that. So get together with your team, as with any of these other variables, and brainstorm. Okay, if our mentees are unmotivated, what are some of the ways that we can motivate them? So some of the things that I was thinking about, that because, and this actually happened in my programs too, and one is, and I'll show you some of these, is start with fun, interactive exercises, and not just kind of drill them down into, okay, this is a goal setting sheet and set your goals, and start with something that's more fun. If you're a group mentoring program or a program where you can provide training to the mentees, ask speakers to come in, which is actually number 5. So in my programs, I had speakers come in who are successful. The mentees love hearing about mentors who overcame obstacles, especially mentors who William's term have walked in their shoes, come from the same areas, faced the same things. They love hearing that I was once in your situation, and this is how I became successful at whatever I'm doing. You can also have a contest to design goal setting models, which I'll talk about later. I know in William's programs in the past, he had in group mentoring, the young people joined together and set a goal to do a community project together, which also teaches them goal setting. So there are many ways to inspire. So some of the variables, if it's a one-to-one mentoring model versus group, your goal setting process is going to be different. Most have written goal setting processes. Some people might try verbal. And as Ed mentioned, the mentees' age and developmental levels will provide guidance on the complexity or the simplicity of goal setting materials, and so forth. And again, the 15 considerations I came up with are in the handouts. So get together with your team and kind of brainstorm about, what your goal setting process is going to look like. Next, please. So my first exercise, and I have 3 of them, and they're exercises conducive to goal setting, and I have an asterisk there. They're all included with the handouts. The handouts describe how to give the instructions to group mentoring, but you can extrapolate, and it can be one-on-one. So I know that many of you have done this exercise with young people. You bring in a bunch of magazines, some glue, some poster boards, some scissors, and give them a half hour, and they get to cut out things they like, they love, they want, places that they want to go, what they want to be, jobs they want to do, and so forth. And then if it's in the group setting, there'll be a time where each mentee will be able to share, what their vision is, or what their dreams are. So I try to get people involved with these kinds of exercises, usually before just kind of going straight to the goal setting. I also try to help them think of a language, or create a language for goal setting. And so as it says here, a goal is a dream or a vision with a plan. So it starts to kind of get them geared into, okay, I've dreamt about this, I've envisioned this, but how do I pick something out and then actually do it? And next, please. So my second one is a simple one. It's called 3 Wishes, and I've used it with all ages, in first and second graders all the way to adults. And I know it works with adults because I first found it when I was an intern at a residential crisis center for adults in severe crisis. And somebody brought this into the group setting, and I noticed the adults love doing this too. So it's very simple. It doesn't take long. So like if you're giving an orientation, maybe the first day of group mentoring, and you want to have them do an exercise that's kind of creative, you can do this, and you give them colored pencils or markers. And the thing is for them to write down 3 things you want for yourself for the future. And sometimes you can see immediately where their psyche or where their world is. One time I was doing this exercise, and tragically a young person drew an image of a person standing with a red marker. He had blood dripping from the arm, and then he crossed it out. And when we went around, he said, and this was the 5th grader, he said, "I don't want to see people bleeding from shots or stabbings in my neighborhood anymore." So it gave me a pretty good picture of where this young person was, what he was seeing every day. In the group setting, you can ask mentees to share again. I always ask for volunteers. I never force anybody to share. Mentors can also do some of these exercises, but the caution for them is to never go too high, get too emotional about what they're sharing, because mentoring is not about getting therapy for the mentor, and it's not about taking a lot of time too. So if the mentor shares, ask them to be relatively brief. But sometimes the mentees want to know who you are as a mentor or a staff person too, so they would enjoy seeing your 3 wishes also. Okay, next please. And the third one is one of my favorites, and I call it the tree that is me. And again, the instructions are included in the handouts. And so you can do this one-to-one, you can do it in the group setting. I have a key in the instructions. You can change the key to, maybe you're in a STEM program and you want to talk about STEM subjects or robotics, or could be totally academics, or just in general. So this is more of in general. And you ask the young people to draw or write on the ground, what is your foundation, the roots, what nourishes you. Very often they'll come up with religion or music or sports or something like that. The one that they really like to talk about, and I think maybe we all do, is what is your biggest strength? Everybody wants to think about, okay, what is my biggest strength? And you write that on the trunk, or you put some kind of an image. And then the one that gets into the actual goal setting are the branches. What are the directions you're thinking of going? The interest, your possible goals. And then just to break it up a bit, what do you do for fun or to relieve stress in the leaves? So once I was doing this with a group of older transition age foster youth in a program in Los Angeles, and it was interesting. This young man drew pictures of apples with names on them in the tree, and on the ground he had apples also with names on them, and the apples were a little bit rotten. And so when he shared, we said, well, what are these apples? And he said, the apples in the trees are the friends I need to keep. The apples on the ground are the bad influences, the friends that I need to leave behind. So again, doing these kinds of exercises can just open up, the mentees world to the mentors or staff. This program this exercise I've noticed is one of the mentees' favorites. It's kind of organic and gets their creative juices flowing, and it's a lot of fun, and it can lead up into goal setting. So if you've got their goals in the branches, you can have them choose one goal to work on. And then getting to the actual goal setting models. The next one is SMART goals. And I didn't think of this until Minnie put the poll question up about the goal setting models. So if you use a goal setting model, I think it would be interesting for everybody if you put in the chat what goal setting model or models you use. And as you do that, oh, I see my goal setting model already in there. Thanks, Kayla. So a lot of smart goals. So SMART goals are, of course, it's what's on this slide, is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely or time bound. So it's the most widely used goal setting model that I've seen out there in the internet. It's used in academics, used in mentoring programs, it's used in businesses, and it's really good for helping people choose their goals. And that's a big part of goal setting, is being able to choose the right goal. And what I noticed also is it's not a model for helping them to achieve a goal. So on the next slide is something that I cooked up a few years ago and I've used. I call it my CHAMP goal setting model. I actually did some research on the transition of athletes from sports to private life, which is kind of a rough transition. And I'll show you another model related to that. And I think it's the next slide in a moment. But so I came up with a model, and then I simplified it when I decided to work with young people in the school system into the CHAMP model. So C is the challenge or goal, could be their calling, and also hurdles, what's stopping you. Achievement is the important part of visualization, having the young person visualize, well, what will I get? How will it feel to get that B in math? How will it feel to get that certificate of graduation? How will it feel to make enough money to buy a bicycle, whatever it is? M is for mentor, which you have to admit fits very nicely into mentoring programs. Who might help you? And so it's not only a specific mentor, it could be, mentors stand for information. Where can I get more information on how to achieve this goal? P is for plan, the 1 to 4 steps you need to take to achieve the goal. I have it in the handouts with instructions, and also you can see on the left side of the page there, the slide is an actual goal setting sheet. So they actually list their goals. And the mentors, again, can do it too. Again, mentors, if you're going to do this, don't go too high or too low. Don't have your goal be, I want to buy a Lexus, because maybe the mentees can't relate to that. So I saw a lot of SMART models. Almost everybody uses SMART goals. That's great. Next slide, please. One thing that I'd like to do in my programs, or when I was doing direct services, is ask mentees and mentors if they're motivated to find or create their own models. So you can ask folks to search around the internet. If you put in goal setting template in Google Images, things like the goal breakdown will come up on the left side, and they can have fun choosing whichever they want to use. You can buy or direct young people to books on goal setting. You can do mind mapping, which is on the bottom right. Have them explore mind mapping. The top right is goal setting for adults. And I noticed I actually was doing some research on Brian Tracy. He has a 14-step goal model. So what I would do in our program, if I had a program today, and if somebody wanted to do it, a mentee or a mentor, explore the 14 steps that Brian Tracy has and see if you can boil them down to something that's more digestible. And then the hero's journey. This is actually a reduction of the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was a mythologist who studied the hero's journey, which has just gone all through our culture, and screenwriters use it and writers use it to write books. But I developed this one to help former athletes make the transition. And it's also just a really good goal setting model for anybody. And it talks about going from where you are, the ordinary world, and then going into the special world, and then having to return back to the ordinary world at some time when you're older. And as the travelers do in mythology, the thing to do when you come back is to give back and to tell stories and to be a mentor and to help other people, young people, know what's out there. And the next slide, and I think it's my last one, and about 3 minutes ahead of schedule, William, so you can take a little bit more time if you want. And I think this is something that Ed said in his presentation he ended up with. And so what I notice in my groups, that sometimes the young people would forget a specific goal setting model, but I'd run into them a couple of years later, and they would talk about the fact that what they learned was that you really have to concentrate. If you want something, you have to kind of break it down and maybe journal about it and strategize. And so I think what we do when we're showing these goal setting models and teaching, instructing them how to do it, is that we're teaching them character traits. So all is not lost if they forget about it. Okay, William, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Jerry. Right. That was great information from Jerry and Edmund. I really love hearing it. Even as a practitioner myself, it's always good to get new and fresh information or get a fresh perspective. So I appreciate all that information. All right. So back to the matter at hand. So over at LATM, and that's Los Angeles Team Mentoring, the program that I'm associated with, we have an approach in our programs that I'd like to share with you today. And so first and foremost, because we work with kids living in underserved communities, we feel it's really important, really important to first really explore their thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and motivation for the future. So before taking stock into the idea of goal setting, again, we like to explore their thoughts, their feelings, their beliefs, and motivation for the future. So with that said, I'd like to share with you a few activities important for priming students to goal set. So let's start with motivational intelligence. So how do we inspire the kids in our programs that have lost hope? And I get this feedback all the time when I'm talking to mentors or educators or administrators at schools. And they all say this, oftentimes they're working with kids and they say, Mr. Miss, I can't. Or, my brother said I can't. Or, my family, we just don't do things like that. And so, Jerry and Edmund touched on this, based on the culture of their communities or their schools or the folks around them, they sometimes have kind of lost hope. So we really got to work on that motivational intelligence. So how do we inspire the kids in our programs that have lost hope? Well, first, we have to get a baseline of where our kids are emotionally and mentally. So as you see here, motivational intelligence is our ability to regulate our self-limiting thoughts and beliefs to overcome challenges in the future. And, we all have these, but kids, particularly as they get into the adolescent years and the teenage years, they really have a lot of self-doubt and they have that negative self-talk. And so again, motivational intelligence is our ability to regulate our self-limiting thoughts and beliefs to overcome challenges in the future. So again, if the kids have lost hope and don't believe in themselves, then it will be difficult for them to set and fulfill goals. So let's explore a little more on the next slide. All right. So now you may be asking, how can I develop my mentees' motivational intelligence? Well, there's several ways, but if we're able to help our students better control their emotions, right, better control their emotions and help them redirect their negative thoughts and feelings, then the work of goal setting can truly begin. Additionally, if we can help them with tapping into their self-awareness, then we can also improve both their decision-making and their resiliency. So when mentees, and we all know this, when mentees feel more confident, then they tend to be more open to trying new things like goal setting and making mistakes, which is an important part of the goal setting process, right? So we got to not have that fear and we got to be willing to make mistakes. And this will become the epicenter to many of the successes in their lives. So, let me now show you a few activities that we use in our program that we strongly believe can move the needle, again, moving that needle to help our kids unpack their negative thoughts and feelings. All right, next slide. All right, so here's a great activity. I like this activity. A simple yet, terrific foundation for goal setting. So, journaling, when practiced regularly, students have the opportunity to significantly improve their mental health. And we all know our kids really need this today. As a result of the pandemic, there are a lot of mental health challenges. So again, journaling daily can significantly improve their mental health and subsequently improve their lives. So at first, your mentees might need a little motivation. So you might need to incentivize getting the momentum going to getting them into the practice, right? Again, the practice, kind of changing the behavior a little bit, but getting into the practice of journaling. Additionally, they may struggle with some of the prompts. So, as facilitators or mentors, please be prepared to help. Jerry touched on this. It's always important, again, as facilitators or mentors, to also participate with the kids. And Jerry touched on this. I love when he's like, you don't want to go too deep yourself as you're sharing with the kids, but just enough to inspire the kids through your own journaling. All right. So again, I suggest journaling with the youth, make it a team effort, show them that, you're all in this together. And then the prompt that they might struggle with is the prompt on their previous day's mistake and turning it into a learning opportunity for that day. And I think that one's really cool. None of us are perfect. And from day to day, we're doing our best, to be good human beings. But sometimes, there could be something that we can tweak that we learned that day that, maybe right before you're going to bed, you're reflecting and you're thinking about it. But how great is that for our kids? Again, kind of changing that mental thought process. Okay, this was maybe a challenge for me today. How do I turn it into a learning opportunity for the next day? All right. So if you really step back and look at these prompts, it really starts to reprogram the brain and offers more positive thinking and hope. Again, so think about that. We want to reprogram their brains to give them more positive thinking and hope. And as everyone on the call today knows, sometimes our mentees need a little help seeing through the clouds. All right, so let's continue. All right, our next slide here is, so I love this slide. So being, as I said to you guys before, being an at-risk child myself, I can relate 100%. The kids also tend to lack the skills, and I know I did, the knowledge and tools, and again, I know I did, to make informed decisions for their lives, which is really necessary to set tangible goals. Let's take a look at another activity that helps students explore and improve their decision-making skills. All right. So we're on the next slide. All right. Okay. So the purpose of this activity is to help mentees move from reactive thinking to responsible decision-making. So we introduce the objectives as follows. Every day we're making hundreds and hundreds of decisions in our lives. We choose what to wear, what to eat, how to respond when someone says or does something hurtful, and so on. And sometimes we make decisions without even thinking, while in other cases, we put more thought into our decisions. So for this activity, we tell the kids, we're going to talk all about 3 types of decisions. And that is no decisions, snap decisions, and responsible decisions. And then we break down the definitions for each, and then we give the kids scenarios to think through. And so some examples of the scenarios are taking change out of your mom's purse because she never notices. All right, so that's a scenario they work through. Or not forwarding, and again, our kids live in the social media world, not forwarding an unfavorable text around the school, or if the person in front of you at Target drops a $20 bill and you don't say anything. So, so after the groups are done, and then they tape their answers and to one of the following categories, we have some follow-up questions, some reflection questions. So why did you choose to place that example in that category? And what are the likely outcomes and consequences for that decision? Again, when you're thinking about goal setting, we also got to think about what are those outcomes. And so again, what are the outcomes or consequences? And then what value or values are revealed in that decision? So again, tapping into their self-beliefs and their thoughts. Because that plays into their decision-making. And then is there another way to handle the situation? And again, getting them to critically think and through that, so which is also important as they're developing or setting goals that, there will be realistic and tangible. So this is part of the exercise. Part 2 of the exercise, which is really the test. So in our curriculum, we build it up, they get to practice, and then we have a test. Part 2 of the exercise is the test, and it includes a story about 3 friends, and 2 of the friends become a couple. And then the main character sees the one friend kissing another girl and has to make the decision to tell or not to tell. And again, exploring the cause and effect of their decision making. So at the end of the day, when students understand the cause and effect of their decision-making, then they gain personal power. And I love that. Now they're in control. They feel in control. And so when they gain that personal power, inevitably, it gives them a greater sense of control and independence, which again boosts their self-esteem and motivation. So again, setting them up to be able to make well-informed decisions, and which then leads to setting positive, tangible goals. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I love this quote because it is absolutely true. We become what we believe. And I think everybody on the call probably can agree with that. We become what we believe. And we don't want our kids to buy into faulty belief systems that complicate their lives and sometimes lead to negative life consequences. Edmund touched on this. Our kids have the skills. They really, really do. We just got to help shape them and guide them. So if we can get our youth to love themselves, find the strength that we all have, then they can move through life with the courage and confidence to take bigger, bolder steps, no matter how difficult the journey may become. So let's continue with an all-time favorite activity in our program. Again, when I say it's an all-time favorite, that allows our kids to do some self-discovery, and it's called Set the Elephant Free. All right. Next slide, please. All right, so once again, this activity helps students to investigate their self-imposed false beliefs, but also helps them with identifying their strengths and dreams for the future. It really is a clever way to look at what is holding you back so a young person can begin to heal and look at their future more positively with resiliency. This concept can be a powerful tool for students. And what's more, the lesson can be referred to by mentors throughout the duration of the relationship with the mentee. So this is a good way to set it up and get that baseline to know where your kids are at, get that gauge. And then you can tap into this and build off of this through the course of your relationship with your mentee. Again, the topic is false limits, that we begin to believe as each of us has the power to be and do so much more than we believe. So let me quickly read you this story. So this is the story. So have you ever seen an elephant? You know, it's one of the most powerful animals on earth. But did you know how elephants are kept under control? When a baby elephant is born, it weighs 400 pounds. Soon after it's born, a rope is tied to its foot and then tethered to a stake in the ground. At first, it pulls on the rope and pulls, but it can't get away. But after a while, it stops tugging because it starts to believe that it can't pull the stake from the ground. All right, next slide. All right, as the elephant gets bigger, the people at the circus continue to use the same rope and stake. And even though an elephant can grow 30 times the size it was when it was a baby, when it gets older, it stops pulling on the rope because it thinks it can't break away. So can you imagine a 12,000-pound elephant being held by a tiny rope? Again, a 12,000-pound elephant being held by a tiny rope. Well, we're all like that elephant. We all have false limits that we put on ourselves because at some point we started to believe what people were saying. We started to compare ourselves to others, and eventually we lost our confidence along the way. So when we're done reading the story with the kids, we ask the students to, just generally speaking, what are some examples of negative self-talk or things that people say that sometimes hold you back? So it's just a general question that we throw out. All right, so let's continue. Now I'll break down the activity a little more for you. Next slide. All right, so that little image there is really what the handout looks like, and that's really what the kids will draw and illustrate on. So the rope, so on the drawing, the mentees will identify on the rope the negative things people have said or done to them, but also the thoughts or beliefs that hold them back. Students are then instructed to identify their strengths, which are the things that will help set their elephant free. And they might need help with that sometimes. And then, through your relationship with them, getting to know your kids, you can help them identify their strengths. Again, like Edmund said, we all have them. And then next, so let's see, they identify their strengths, where the things will help set their elephant free. And then next on the horizon will represent what they want in the future. So here's some of that goal setting. So what are the things that they want for themselves? It can be personal goals, aspirational goals. What are those goals? The things that they want for the future. And then we asked our mentees to make their illustrations colorful. And art is such a great way to get the kids to do that self-discovery and that exploration. And then so we say, illustrate it, be colorful, use symbols or words, get those creative juices flowing. And then when everyone is done, for those who are comfortable sharing, then we ask, the kids to stand up and to share. And then again, I also encourage our facilitators and mentors to also partake in the activity. So then we close the activity with the following. From this moment forward, remember to believe in yourselves and the power you truly have. There is so much more in all of us that we can be doing in this world. And when we focus on our personal strengths, we can set goals that help us achieve our greatest dreams. All right, so let's move on to our last slide. All right, so in closing, we all know that many of our youth that we work with truly don't believe in themselves. But if we can work on redirecting, reframing, reworking their negative self-talk to a more positive inner dialogue, that positive talk with positive inspiration and reinforcement, along with positive mentoring and positive experiences, then we can impact our youth tremendously. So in our program, we try not to only focus on the aspirational goals, but personal goals as well. We have found that exploring and working through the personal goals has given them the confidence and the power to dream bigger and not fear the future. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, William. That's really great. I saw a lot of comments on set the elephant free. I think a lot of people are going to use that exercise, and I've seen it used, and it's a great one. So really, thanks for sharing that and all the information that you shared. We're going to go through a couple slides quickly so we can get through the questions. So you just saw contacting one of us or all three of us, and again, you'll get an email within a week with access to the slides and the resources. And so these are the resources that Ed put up. So I'm sure they're good ones. I have not accessed them yet, but I plan on doing that. And next slide, the additional resources. This is how to find out about affiliates in your area. The mentoring connector helps you recruit mentors. The National Mentoring Resource Center provides no cost technical assistance to mentoring programs, so please access them. And next slide, stay connected, email the folks at Mentor at the collaborative webinar series at mentoring.org. And then there's the other ways to get in touch with them. And I believe Minnie is going to moderate our questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jerry, William, and Edmund, for all the great information. I see we're getting some questions coming in. This is really exciting. I know jump back in the chat earlier in the session. I noticed I took some questions out of there. Jerry, while you were presenting, I think we had a question from Katie just regarding what age range would you say the exercises you presented would work well with?
I think, so that's 3 wishes, vision boards, and champ goal setting, and the tree that is me. I think it would pretty much work with just about all ages. You might have to simplify the tree that is me for younger kids, perhaps a little bit. And then if younger folks can't get the champ goal setting model, you might just go with goal hurdle plan or something like that. But I think they can pretty much be used for just about any age.
Great, thanks, Jerry. I think earlier in the presentation, this might have been during Ed, your presentation, Delphina asked the question, in our one-on-one mentoring program, we encourage mentors not to play the role of tutors. How would you recommend that mentors encourage school-oriented goals when their time with the mentee is more SEL focused?
Yeah, so I saw one of your colleagues in the share from great information. I would agree is the idea is you don't have to necessarily work on the academic goal with them within the program that you set, because again, you don't want them to serve as a tutor. But the idea is if it's around social emotional learning, the key thing is those social emotional learning skills are tied into your success to that goal. So you can think about they're working towards that goal in an academic setting, but the idea is to be able to ask for help, to have self-regulation. You think about the castle model and those self-regulation skills. Those are all important towards achieving a successful goal in an academic setting. So when you say, oh, their goal is, I don't want them to tutor them in math, but you still want to work on those other social emotional learning skills that are linked towards success in the classroom, asking for help, waiting your turn, self-regulating behavior so you don't misbehave in the classroom. So all those ones you're working on within your program are linked to that goal, I would say. So you can still keep working on those SEL skills, but towards that greater goal of a math grade or a better grade or school success.
And if I can chime in, Edmund, you're absolutely correct. We're an SEL program ourselves. And the kids in our program, we've had several evaluations done in our program, and our kids consistently have higher GPAs. There's less behavioral issues in the classroom, and they graduate at a higher rate. So yes, developing and focus on the SEL does have academic impact.
Great, thank you both. And we do have another question here in the Q&A. Clayton asks, building motivational intelligence, learning the importance of goals, setting and working toward them are all interconnected and take time. How do you balance giving an appropriate amount of time for each? Do any of you have personal preferences on where to spend the most time? We all have limited time with our mentees, and I steadily weigh how to balance these approaches to mentorship.
I see Edmund thinking there. Well, in our program, we actually utilize a curriculum. We're a school-based program, and it's a 30-week program. So, we try to break it up into cycles or phases. And we have different themes, thematic themes that we focus on. So, we usually start with team building and leadership development. We go into self-efficacy, and anger management and conflict resolution, and then goal setting and community service. So, and we change it up, every 2 years just to keep it fresh and interesting. But I think, if you're a school-based program, or, you have that ability to utilize activities or lesson plans, just spending at minimum 5 to 6 weeks on each of those objectives, I think can get you to your goal.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, it also matters on the program. So like Sam McClellan's work, I think I mentioned him earlier, his is very focused on academic goals and a very limited mentor-mentee relationship. It could go beyond that specific goal that the mentor and mentee are working together on, but he recognizes that some of these relationships are time limited. So he has a strict curriculum, as William mentioned, that kind of says week 1 is here's what you're going to do, week 2. So he kind of goes through these similar processes, but with his framework. So I'd say think about what your program's main goals are and fit the activities you're doing into that bigger framework that is the mission of your program and the goals of your program.
Great, thank you. Another question here we have is, these are all really great ideas that you're discussing, and I realize they all are very cerebral. Do you have any examples of any somatic practices that support in the reframing process for youth?
Anybody?
Well, when we're talking about reframing, like setting the elephant free is just a perfect example of reframing. So any of those activities that you can find that are really about, building their self-efficacy or their self-esteem, those all play into kind of the reframing of the brain, and just giving the kids an opportunity for you as a practitioner or mentor to hear again. It's just so important for us, and we find it very valuable. Just know what is that starting point, and then from there you leverage that, either for the discussions, the activities, the experiences you're going to have with the kids. I just think that it's just important to have some kind of starting point.
I don't know if this fits, but to my handouts, I also added a three-step problem solving model, and I call it the cost benefit analysis that take off on business. But in a way, it's reframing, but in a way, it's motivational interviewing. So, for instance, a young boy gets mad at his sister, and he wants to punch his sister in the face, and so it's, well, you could do that, but what might happen? You're not telling him not to do that, although it's okay to tell him not to do that. You could do that, but what might happen? So in any situation where you think that maybe somebody could be wanting to set an unhealthy or an unreasonable goal, you could do this cost benefit analysis, which is, again, a form of reframing, a form of motivational interviewing. You could do that, but what might happen? And then if they come up with that negative, outcome, then you can sort of redirect and go, okay, let's think about other things that you could do. Again, that model I put, three-step model is in the handouts.
And then another resource to think about is using Camp Association, American Camp Association resources. I work with camps as well as mentoring programs, much less than I do mentoring programs, but using high ropes courses, low ropes courses. A lot of the team building activities are very somatic in terms of they're overcoming challenges, using their bodies, whether in teams or individually, and then usually with a competent and caring guide through that process, they kind of link that to the bigger goals they set for themselves outside of that process during, and reframing the fear and reframing the challenge and reframing the difficulties in their lives through that somatic process. So I'd say that might be a good way to think somatically about how to look at goals.
Great. Thank you all. And the handouts that everyone has mentioned, we will be sharing them in a follow-up email as well as posting it to our website. And another question is around adapting some of these materials to youth with disabilities. So this person works with young youth and adults who are deaf and progressively losing their vision, but are neurotypical and follow the general education curriculum. Rather than reinventing the wheel, we'd love to benefit from a mainstream model of mentoring. Do you have guidelines or just experience working with kids and mentors with disabilities, and how you would perhaps adapt some of your materials or activities?
I have not myself worked with those populations. Any suggestions, guys?
Neither of we, but we do have a lot of autistic kids in our program. And believe it or not, we use the same curriculum with them. And we have found that they've had, a lot of success in our program. We find autistic kids have become more confident and have developed their social skills. So it might not have to do with our model, that it's a group model. And so, they're learning from their peers. And then they start, wanting to, mirror what their peers are doing. And so we find they benefit, but I don't have any personal experience, but I know there's a lot of great organizations that work with kids with disabilities. And so, if you do your research out there, you'll find some. I know there's one that's starting up, I believe in New York, it's called Pickle something. I can't think of it. And I know there's one here in Los Angeles that works with kids with disabilities. I think they do a lot of recreational type, more physical kinesthetic type of activities. But yeah, I don't have a lot of experience. I don't know if Edmund does.
No, I also don't have direct personal experience, but we have, so in my program, we have students from all over different programs. And one is expert in American Sign Language. So she runs a youth program that links tennis and life skills with children with hearing difficulties. So if you want to follow up with me, I can try to reach out to her and see what she does. But I wouldn't have that direct knowledge off the top of my head. It'd be more of the some of my students that work with these populations. And then Minnie also shared a link in the chat box.
Actually, I can jump in there with another question that I'm seeing in the chat box. I think Eric asked how to inspire mentees or help them to set goals when they don't want to. So that's a tough one. I would say start with relationship, try to develop the relationship. Don't push goal setting. I go back to my foundations, which I mentioned in the first slide. Find out what they love. and try to help them achieve it or even appreciate it. Maybe it's something that they already know how to do. So years ago, I was working with a psychologist, and we were doing group counseling with middle school boys, and it was over on the coast of California, and they all like skateboarding. So to get them actually to solidify our relationships, we asked them to bring in their skateboards, and they would show us tricks in the circle, and we would ooh and ah. And the psychologist and I knew absolutely nothing about skateboarding, but oh, that's a great double ollie, and all that kind of stuff. And through that, the building of relationship, appreciating what they did, they started actually talking about behavioral goals when we asked them to do that. But it took a while. We didn't come in the first day and go, okay, let's talk about how you can control your anger. We developed the relationships. We appreciated, the things that they loved in their life, and then we went into it. Any other questions, Minnie?
Taking a look in the Q&A and the chat if I missed it.
As many's looking, I want to also just go back to William's point about hope. From my research, we talk about goal-directed skills, but without that hope, they don't actualize those skills. So the idea is, in my research and the research from my colleagues at Tufts on positive development, hope's our most consistent predictor of the 5 C's of PYD across populations of youth. So hope, and I'm doing some reviews of hope around the world, and it's that strongest predictor of good outcomes in kids. So I just want to link back to William's point about the role of hope and promoting hope amongst kids.
I think that's great in one way. And I, used to be a counselor. To try to spark hope in kids, sometimes it's just telling stories, and it's telling stories about somebody who was in a similar situation and found their way out. Because a lot of times when kids are traumatized and surrounded by powerlessness and whatever it is, poverty, sometimes they have a hard time seeing that they'll ever have a life that's anything different from where they are. So one way is to tell stories. The other way, if you have this opportunity, again, is to bring speakers in and have them talk about how they made their way into a happy, successful life.
Great. Thank you all so much. I don't see too many other questions in the chat. I know folks are still just writing in some resources at the moment. I know Dana just put in some resources around approaches with those who have disabilities. There's a Rocky Mountain Human Services in Denver, Colorado. So thanks for sharing that. But yeah, Jerry, I don't think I have any other questions in the chat.
Okay, I think that's a wrap. I want to thank everybody for attending today, and we hope you'll come back and attend more of these collaborative mentoring webinar series webinars. That's a mouthful. And then also there are recordings of webinars at the site too. For the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, we've been doing, or other practitioners have been providing these once a month. So thank you, and I want to thank Ed and William for a great presentation. Really enjoyed it and love to talk about goal setting. And I'm going to type my email in the chat box if anybody wants to contact me about the CHAMP model, or I have quite a bit of information on the hero's journey as a goal setting model too. Any last words, guys?
No, just thank you to everyone for being on the call today. It was great.
Thank you very much for your interest. We appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you, Minnie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Minnie, for pulling us together as always.